Hello Bio 2, this is Mr. B, and we're going to finish our introduction to the mammals today. And so we ended with their circulatory system, and we're going to start with how mammals carry out excretion. And so the big organ involved with excretion is kidneys, and their job is to extract nitrogenous waste from the blood in the form of urea. So then urea and other waste and water all come together to form urine, and then from the kidneys, urine flows to a urinary bladder where it is stored until it is eliminated. So pretty basic, just kidneys are taking our waste out of our blood and putting it into a form that we can eliminate from our bodies. And then the kidneys help maintain homeostasis in mammals by, again, just filtering the urea from the blood as well as excreting excess water or retaining needed water. So that all helps keep the mammal balanced, keeps everything working normally inside the body. So another thing, a big function of the kidney, which was kind of mentioned before, is that they control the amount of water in the body. And this enables mammals to live in many habitats in which they could not otherwise survive. So that could be maybe a really dry environment where there's not a lot of water year-round, so their kidneys can help them keep in as much water as they need to survive. So that's the excretory system, the kidney being the most important part inside of mammals. And so for response, so now this is a huge thing in mammals now. So this is what basically sets us apart from the rest of the animal groups here, is our ability to respond. So mammals have a very well-developed brain, and there's three main parts in this brain. So this is an important slide to know, this one right here. And the first part is the cerebrum, which controls thinking and learning, our cerebellum, which controls muscular coordination, which is basically the ability to move, and then our medulla oblongata, which regulates involuntary body functions. And involuntary body functions are things like breathing, pumping our blood. We don't have to tell our body, hey, pump blood here, hey, breathe now. I mean, we can obviously control our breaths, but we do it subconsciously. We don't know we're actually breathing. We can't just tell our body to stop breathing. We can hold our breath, but eventually where it's going to come back again. So here is our main portions of our mammal brain. You can see that the giant cerebrum, and then cerebellum being kind of another big portion, followed by the medulla oblongata. Again, those are our main portions of the brain, with our olfactory bulb kind of being up there in the front. And so then our optic lobe is actually located kind of on the back portion of our brain as well. So there's a lot more different portions of the brain that we could get into, but we don't have enough time to do that in this class. So we're just going to hit on the main parts. So this is an important section right here. So the cerebrum has a well-developed outer layer called the cerebral cortex. So this is a really important part of our brain, which is found inside of the cerebrum. So the cerebrum obviously houses the cerebral cortex, and this is the center of thinking and other complex behaviors. So some behaviors, such as reading, are possible only with a human cerebral cortex. So because our cerebral cortex is so advanced, so evolved, we are able to read, and that is something that sets us apart from the rest of the animals. And so there are mammals that are other than humans, will also exhibit complex behaviors as well because of this cerebral cortex. However, most of our complex behaviors that we have are because of our cerebral cortex. And so mammals rely on highly developed senses to detect and respond to stimuli from their external environment. So mammals are always responding, always kind of checking their surroundings and making sure that they're responding in an appropriate manner. And so many have well-developed senses of smell and hearing, which again, this is kind of something where we might lack compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, so that they can really outshine us in terms of their ability to hear and their ability to smell within the mammals. And so all mammalian ears go into the hearing. They have the same basic parts, but they differ in their ability to detect sound. So again, we can hear fairly well. However, compared to things like dogs, bats, and dolphins, they detect sounds at much higher frequencies than humans can. And so bats actually use a type of sonar in their hearing. Dogs, again, they howl whenever they hear a siren, which we can barely hear, and so obviously because their hearing's better than us, and it might affect them a little bit more. However, elephants, they detect sounds at much lower frequencies, so that doesn't necessarily mean their hearing is worse. It's just they can hear lower things compared to what we can. So mammalian ears, kind of the most important part to take away from this, is that we have the same basic construction, same basic parts. However, their abilities to hear and the way they hear are all very different. So then going along with kind of some more of our response is the ability to distinguish colors varies among species. So dogs and cats, I believe, are both colorblind, and whereas we are obviously can't see colors, but there are some humans that have genetic mutations that make them colorblind as well. And color vision, again, we've talked about this before, is most useful to animals that are active during the day. So if you're active at night, there's really no point to be able to see color because everything's going to be dark anyway. And so that is it for the response. Again, things that are controlled by the brain, which is again a big thing in the mammalian group, is the very evolved brain. So another big thing in the mammalian group, which we kind of have mentioned with plants and we mentioned with some insects, is the chemicals that are present in mammals. So mammals have what are called endocrine glands that regulate body activities by releasing hormones. So the job of an endocrine gland, so this is important, is that it releases hormones. And if you remember, hormones are substances that are produced in one part of an organism that affect another part of the same organism. So again, we have a lot of glands, a lot of them are actually up in our neck area that produce, and actually some by our brain as well, that produce our hormones, and then the hormones affect different parts of our body. It's the reason why a lot of you were going crazy a couple years ago, and some of you still are, because you're raging hormones being produced at a big time in this stage in your life. And then hormones are carried by the blood to the organs they affect. So hormones travel through the blood in order to get to the part of the organism that they are going to affect. So that's the chemical controls. There are a lot of hormones that are present in mammals, and they can signal things just from becoming sexually mature, being stressed, things like that. So that's what hormones do. And so fighting disease, so this is another big thing in mammals as well. So we all have what's called an immune system that helps protect the animals from disease. And the first actually portion of the immune system, which most people might not know, is the skin. So that's our first line of the immune system because it is a barrier to the outside, and it prevents pathogens, which a pathogen is just anything that can cause disease, from entering the body. And so then, however, the skin is not going to keep everything out, so once they do enter, there are some specialized cells and chemicals that will recognize and then destroy the pathogens once they make it inside of our body. So fighting disease, another big thing within the mammal group. So movement is our next one. For mammals, again, this is done in a variety of ways. So mammals have backbones that will flex vertically and side to side, which can allow for a lot of free-range movement, not very rigid. And shoulder and pelvic girdles are streamlined and flexible, permitting both front and hind limbs to move in many ways. So again, if we had not a streamlined and flexible pelvic girdle, we would just have straight legs all the time, and we'd be walking like our legs were basically like 2x4s is how we would have to walk. The same thing with our shoulders. We wouldn't be able to move our arms at all. They'd just be stuck straight out at our side all the time. And then variation in limb bones and muscles permit a variety of movements. So within different groups, there's different muscles that allow them to move in different ways. And so the limbs and digits, or fingers and toes, of many mammals are adapted to a particular way of life. And so note the variety of lengths and shape of limb bones, and these are homologous bones, are the same color in all the drawings. So what homologous means is that all of these bones, all of the blue bones, all the red bones, all yellow, all purple, all orange, and all the pink, they have the same history, they have the same evolutionary history, but within each organism they've evolved a specialized function, whereas the bat has a wing, monkey has hands, seal has flippers, horse has a hoof, mole has a little claws. Those are all very different structures, however they all came from the same evolutionary bones. They all are similar bones, they just have different functions throughout the course of time. So to wrap up our introduction to the mammals, we're going to talk about reproduction. So all mammals reproduce by internal fertilization, that's pretty obvious, and just the whole process is that the male deposits sperm inside the female reproductive tract, and that's where fertilization occurs, so nothing new there. And all newborn mammals will feed on their mother's milk. So we talked about that at the very beginning, that being a distinguishing characteristic. And young mammals, all young mammals need care from one or both their parents when they are born and for a long time afterward. So mammal babies are really dependent upon their parents for survival. And parental care, so the parents, the reason why they care, so why don't they just have their babies and leave them alone? Well, them taking care of their young will ensure that their young will survive and reproduce, and therefore it will continue to pass on their genes. And then the duration and intensity of parental care, however, it does vary among different species. So there's some organisms that have different parental care than others. In some mammal species, such as lions, they live in groups where the young may be cared for by adults other than the parents. So this is kind of like a group effort in some groups of mammals. And this provides mammals with different social interactions among adults and juveniles, which again leads to different complex behaviors in these different types of animals. So that is it for mammals. Let me know if you have any questions.